Welcome to the Questionistas podcast. I'm Thomas.
And I'm Spencer.
Quick disclaimer, this is for education and entertainment purposes only. If you need help, please see a professional. We are not experts, nor do we give medical advice. Take our words with a gallon of salt.
Hey, Thomas, what's the question today?
Question today is, why is math hard?
Yes, the one class that I somehow barely passed in college.
One thing that's funny for me is I hated math with a burning passion in middle school and high school.
Mm-hmm.
And even college, when I was getting my English degree, I was so pissed off at my general ed credits and especially the math.
Yeah, it was interesting that I could see its value, but I couldn't see its value to what I was studying at the time. It wasn't until I was in graduate school that I was doing game development that I was working with engineers and they were explaining me the math behind the physics engine or the gravity that we had to build in the game. And I was like, why didn't someone teach me math this way? This makes 1,000 times more sense. And so like once it became applicable to me, it became valuable and I appreciated it. For a very long time, very difficult to respect and to want to learn.
And I gave my mom so much grief over her trying to get me to do my math.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're listening to this, Mom, I'm so sorry for being such a little turd. But even when I took the test at the beginning of working on my associate's degree, actually, I didn't do an associate's, I just did general ed, and then I transferred to the U. I took the test for evaluating where I needed to start with English and math. And on English, I was way on the advanced scale. They're like, yeah, you can start. You just need to take a couple advanced English classes and you're good. For the math one, they had to pencil in an earlier math course than the lowest level. They're like, you need to start here. This is how bad your math is. And then later, when I got into doing research and stuff like that, same experience. I started learning about these aspects of math. I'm like, wait, this is actually A, useful, and B, cool. Now I love doing math. And I feel cheated.
Yeah, and understanding statistics, what little I have, I never ended up taking statistics classes, but what I've had to learn on the fly with statistics and with data integrity and data quality, it's extremely valuable. And probably one of my favorite memes is a picture of a pumpkin, and it says 0.006. The margin of error is always 0.005 or lower, and any higher than that is bad. And so it was the scariest pumpkin to a statistician to have a pumpkin that says 0.006 because that means the data doesn't meet the standard. So I've come a long way from hating math to stupid pumpkins that have scary numbers on them.
I want to preface this discussion with just a bit of a summary of what we're going to be looking at. We're going to do a rapid fire look at a bunch of these little math problems. They might seem like riddles or trick questions, trap questions, but they're situations that you could run into every day. One of the main things I'm shooting for with this episode is giving our listeners a realization, which is that our gut reactions cannot always be trusted.
That sounds similar to something we talked about in the past, but also some research that I found again this week, which was your first instinct on a multiple choice test isn't always right. And so it's okay to go back and check it. And that fallacy is just go with your gut instinct because that's what's correct.
Definitely related to that. One short description I have of this is your emotions and gut reactions are good for small scale numbers, but not for exponential numbers or even percentages.
Mm-hmm.
And we have biases that we've developed that help us do what is called satisficing, which means good enough for most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I always want to emphasize that with people because there are people who like to say, oh, everyone's irrational and stupid. No, we've made it pretty far despite a few flaws. But we're going to get into some issues where our instincts about math betray us. And usually it's not even necessarily the instincts about math. It's often the instincts about what makes a good story. We want to make the world a story that makes sense. And that story often conflicts with the math. There's this one principle, and it's usually in reaction to something not making sense intuitively. It's shut up and do the math.
Okay.
And what that means is sometimes you just need to do the math, and if you triple, quadruple check it for things with big numbers and percentages, you can trust the math better than your instincts, better than your gut reactions. So let's go through a few of these.
Sure.
There's two that relate to gambling that I want to talk about. I'll explain the first one, and then I'll let Spencer tell. I don't know if I should let you tell a story. I don't know if you... No, you're not saying names. It's fine. First one's the gambler's fallacy. Second one is the hot hand fallacy. The gambler's fallacy is when you're arguing that the result of a random process will lean a different way if past results leaned another. So, for example, let's say you flip a coin 5 times and you get 4 tails. And you're like, okay, this next one's got to be a 5, right? Or, Spencer, you had an example from a video game. Go ahead.
Yeah, so think of a video game. Fallout was one that comes to mind. But there's a lot of different games where I want to attack someone and it tells you have a 33% chance of attacking that person. And you're like, cool, I'll just hit them 3 times and one of those will hit, right? And you hit and you miss 3 different times because each attack is a separate percentage chance. It's not over the course of 3 times are you likely to get 1. And so the 4 tails doesn't mean a whole hill of beans because that next flip is completely devoid or separate from.
It's not every third attack will hit.
Correct.
It is every time you attack, there's a 33% chance it will hit.
Right.
It's like some people talk about doing like that with sales. It's like, oh, if 1% of people will actually buy the thing, knock on 100 doors. You're sure to get 1. It's like,
right.
No, it's 1% every time. Now,
every time you knock on a door.
Will you see this trend of 33%? Yeah, but that's usually over the course of thousands. Like if you do 10,000 hits, about 33% of them, or 10,000 attacks, about 33% of them will be hits. But when you're working in the numbers of like a handful, it's not going to be 1 out of 3. It's not even going to be 1 out of 100. Say the chance is 1 out of 1,000. Even if you did 1,000 hits, that would start approaching 33%, and it might even be at 33%, but it could just easily be, it ended up that only 5% landed.
Yep.
That 33% is a new thing every time. Saying that you will get a hit you will land a hit every third one is different than 33% each.
Yeah. So how does that differ from the hot hand fallacy?
Hot hand fallacy is similar. They have some overlap. Hot hand fallacy is arguing that the results of a random process will lean one way if past results leaned that same way. I'm on a roll. I need to keep going. Oh man, I'm getting so much luck. I better keep going while my luck is still here. It's a different perspective on the same problem.
Well, it's interesting that a lot of the times, and I've seen it with dice rolling in RPG games, where you're rolling dice and you anthropomorphize the situation, or you build a narrative within the situation that I'm getting lucky. I have this luck. This
I'm on a lucky streak.
This lucky streak is this imaginary object that is encompassing me right now, and I need to take benefit of it because it's going to disappear any moment. And so I'm going to keep rolling. Or my favorite is in dice rolling for RPGs, you'll roll a dice and then it does poorly and you say, I'm going to punish that dice. I'm putting it in dice jail.
I'm putting it in dice jail.
And you stick it in a box and you don't roll with it the rest of the day. Because
or what is it? These dice are good. I rolled the ones out of them already.
Yeah, I've rolled all the bad rolls out of this one because that's how dice work. And for some reason we anthropomorphize, or we build that narrative around because it's easier to understand a narrative than it does to just, dude, it's just 5% chance on a 20-sided dice. That's all it is. Like, you have a 5% chance every single time you go. But for some reason, maybe for a game where the stakes don't matter, I guess I'm okay with that. But it's funny how in a fun environment we want to build a narrative, but in a serious environment we unfortunately build that same narrative that doesn't make any sense or is irrational.
Well, it's like, say you're rolling your D20 to do different things and you roll a 1 5 times in a row.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, what's the likelihood of that? And it's like, well, the likelihood of rolling 1 5 times in a row, it's not very likely, but what's the likelihood of you getting 5 rolls you like versus 5 rolls you don't like? There's a lot more options of rolls that you won't like.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many options that there's so many possibilities of those 5 rolls all being under, let's say, 15.
Right.
There's thousands of maybe not thousands, actually probably, of all those rolls being under 15. In a series of random events, most of the possible series you could go through are ones that you don't want. And there's a handful that you do.
You said we were going to go fast, so I'm going to move us along.
Dang it, I failed. All right, yep, I'm going to keep going. Thank you.
So Air Force yelling
yeah,
increases performance.
So this example, I believe it came from Irrationality, What It Is, Why It Matters, by Steven Pinker. Or is it from a different book? Doesn't matter. Gave the example of observing people in the military. A sergeant is training a bunch of pilots. The pilots go out and they do a run, and they come back. And one of them does great. And he says, oh, good job. You did awesome. Then they go and do another run, and he doesn't do as good. And so the sergeant is like, it's because I made him cocky. I made him overconfident. Mm-hmm. And so somebody does great, and they come back, or somebody does poorly, and they come back, and you yell at them, and they do better than that the next time. And you're like, oh, so yelling at them makes them do better, and praising them makes them do worse. No, that's not what's happening. Every time somebody does something, skill is definitely part of it, but there's a chance that they will do better or worse. They'll fluctuate around this average, right? And so if they do exceptionally poor one time, whether you yell at them or not, it can have an effect, but whether you yell at them or not, if they did really bad, like below their average, they're more likely to do better the next time.
Mm-hmm.
And if they do really good one time, they're more likely to be closer to their average the next time, or more likely to do worse, because there's just this like distribution. So if somebody does exceptionally well or exceptionally poorly, their next time of doing it is probably going to be closer to the average. So they kind of get the wrong message about the yelling and the praising.
So that shut up and do the math is you're looking at them in isolated incidents, and you're only looking at the previous historical event as opposed to the events in aggregate.
Yes. And that's where that instinct to make it a story that makes sense is betraying you.
Mm-hmm. Well, and similar to that, I think about Let's Win One for the Gipper, this classic, the narratives around almost every football game that you ever play where you watch and they're like, oh, someone's doing a lot better. It must be because their mother's on their deathbed and they're playing for them a lot harder today. And oh, they're having a bad day. It must be because of personal issues that
making a whole story. And it's not that those things can't have an effect, because they do.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not that drastic of an effect.
Yeah, and if you look at their average playing of the last 20, 50, 100 games, you'd see, oh, they're actually doing okay. Like compared to last time, they're not doing as well, but they're averaging out. I wonder if you get the same thing with batting average for baseball, because the batting average tells you what your average is overall up till that point. And so but I never see them go, well, his batting average is 2.27, so that must mean that he's likely to hit it this time. Well, I don't know. I don't know what that's going to mean.
Or it's like with people who get, oh gosh, what is it, like player of the year or whatever? I don't do sports. Somebody has an amazing year, and they get on the cover of Sports Illustrated as the player of the year or whatever the award is called. And they even call it like player of the year curse, because the next year you're just going to do worse. And it's because of this.
Unless you use steroids and then you perform really well for the multiple years. But that's a different issue.
Another one here, Top Dog.
Yeah, so Top Dog is a book. It's a really fun book, Top Dog: The Science of Winning and Losing, and it talks a lot about why we use competition, but also why we use cooperation, and when is it valuable to use both. And it kind of debunks one of the things is women are cooperative beings and men are competitive beings. And most social science in some way, shape, or form tries to assess competition and cooperation. And so the first recorded peer-reviewed social science study is this competitive and cooperative event where we want to see how many people perform better with cooperation versus competition. So what do you think, how many people perform better in cooperation versus competition, and break it down by gender if you want to get even funner?
Oh, sheesh. I know that there's a lot of stereotypes in play, like women do better than men in cooperation, men do better than women in competition. But gosh, I'm trying to remember what my gut reactions might be, because I've tried to study a lot of these. So I like doubt all of my gut reactions now.
Well, hopefully that gave enough time for the listener to think about it, because the book explains that this first study and basically any consecutive studies that they've done since then for over 100 years has said 25% of people perform better in competition, 25% perform better in cooperation, and 50% do not perform better in either situation, competitive or cooperative. And it has nothing to do with gender. And that's one of the things that he talks about in countless different areas in the rest of the book, where it's assumed, well, we're in this situation where he talks about a military college, and he talks about NASA during the Challenger experience, where it's predominantly men or predominantly women or whatnot. And they're like, well, clearly there's a whole bunch of men, so we need to be more competitive here. And it's like, no, actually that doesn't factor into the situation and breaks gender norms. It's absolutely one of my favorite books that I've ever listened to, because it has such great examples of this breakdown of cooperation is valuable, competition is valuable, but not always in the places that you think you would see it as.
Huh. That's really interesting. That reminds me of one other one that I didn't think of before, but I want to add now. For a lot of attributes, and this happens a lot with like men versus women, males versus females, you have this bell curve, which, so I don't want to just assume people know about math. Let's say that we're talking about muscle strength. There's a small number of people who are super weak, small number of people who are super strong, and tons of people that are either average or getting close to the average. And I'm sorry that these are two where the men are higher. I need to find some more data where the women are higher. My data is biased, but I know that there are examples where the women average higher. But I'm going to use bone density and muscle strength. The information that I've looked at a long time ago says that on average, males have more muscle strength and denser bones.
Mm-hmm.
But it's on this kind of curve as well. So if you pick the single strongest man and the single strongest woman, the strongest one is going to be the man. If you take the single weakest man and the single weakest woman, the weakest one is going to be a woman. If you take the average, whoever's at the average, the male's going to be higher than the female. So people take that and go, oh yeah, men are stronger than women. It's like, on average, if you look at the charts and how they overlap, 50% of women are stronger than 33% of men.
Mm.
So the point of that is, most of that chart overlaps. So the vast majority of people are pretty darn close in those traits. Muscle strength and the bone density.
Mm-hmm.
And people are like, oh yeah, the man's going to be stronger than the woman. And actually, this is a guesstimate. 50% of women are stronger than 30% of men, than 33% of men. And let's say 20% of women are just as strong as the average of men. Most of these groups, it mostly overlaps. So that's a situation where we take the math and we oversimplify it and turn it into a story. Oh yes, men are stronger than women. It's like, no, strongest man, weakest man, average woman, strongest woman, weakest woman. Those are all sitting in higher or lower spots, but the majority of the population, they're all around the same.
Mm-hmm. All right, so moving on here. Monty Hall.
Oh, yes. I'll try not to spend too long on this one. This is one of those ones that people with advanced degrees in math have screwed up. This is one that I have hammered into my head over and over and over again, that it's so easy to mess up. So this is called the Monty Hall problem. There was a show called Let's Make a Deal. And it was hosted by Monty Hall. And the game was, there were 3 doors, and he said, 2 of these have goats, and 1 of them has a Ferrari. And they would say, hey, Spencer, pick a door. Do you pick door 1, 2, or 3?
I'm going to pick 2.
Okay, and now, one of the other 2 doors, I open it and reveal a goat. So now there are 2 doors. Spencer, do you want to change your guess?
Because I know this, but instinctually I think, well, it doesn't really matter. It's a 50-50 choice at this point. I'm going to just stick with my door because it's a coin flip at this point.
And obviously from the setup, we're strongly hinting that's actually not the right choice. You always want to change the door. And it's so hard with the math. Like, it's so anti-intuitive. But the key to getting it, this is what I learned. The key to getting it is that him opening one of the doors tells you something. And this is not something that I can explain quickly. But the simplest way to say this is whichever door you choose and whichever door has the Ferrari, if you keep your guess the same, if you say, I'm not going to change, you have a 1 in 3 chance of winning. If you change your guess, you have a 2 in 3 chance of winning. And the only way that you can really see that is if you map out every single possible flow and you count up all the totals. 1 out of 3, if you keep it, you lose. 2 out of 3, if you change it, you win.
And it's not a 50-50.
And it's not a 50-50. It never gets to 50-50. And the biggest thing is, the game didn't reset when he opened the door. He told you something.
So this is the opposite of the hot hand and the gambler fallacy, where the historical information, the historical event actually does inform and factor in.
Yeah. Because these are not individual events. These are connected events.
That's, I think it, however long it takes you to figure out why it's 66% or 2/3, I think ultimately figuring out when to factor in previous events and when to not factor in previous events is probably even more of a complicated issue. Okay, moving on.
Yes.
What's bigger, the moon or Australia?
This is something that's been popping around the internet lately. It's what's bigger, the moon or Australia? And it's a quick way to test how bad your intuitive sense of size is. So if I were to ask you that, what's bigger, the moon or Australia?
I only think of Australia as a flat piece because I'm not thinking of density. And so when I think of big, I'm thinking of 3-dimensional mass. And so I'd say the moon.
Okay. Let's say that you're just talking about their profile.
I honestly can't even think of how to go through this other than I know the moon's pretty big. So I'm just going to guess the moon.
What's interesting is, this is fascinating. I just pulled up Snopes. If the moon's diameter, 3,500 kilometers, is the yardstick for comparison, then Australia is wider. But the moon's land area is far larger than the continent. Wait, what?
Yeah. Yeah, because the spherical area versus the two-dimensional, we only have two-dimensional area.
Wait. Australia is 7.69 million square kilometers, and the moon is 38 million square kilometers. So the moon has 5 times the surface area, but Australia is
bigger profile-wise.
Oh, what? See? And that's me like double reversing. Gosh, because humans suck at getting the scale of things in outer space. Like,
oh, sure.
Oh, it's like, there are these hikes that you can go on and they're like, proportionally, here's the Earth. Walk for 3 miles. Here's Venus. Or the moon. And you're like, wait, what?
I went with my wife recently up in the mountains in Utah, and there's a town where someone created a observatory. And as part of it, he was such a big astronomer that he wanted to create a life-size scale of the universe. And so he created a 2-scale sun, and you can start from there and you can walk like 50 feet, and then you run into Venus, and then you run into Mercury,
and they're like,
and then you run into
specks?
Earth. Well, you're right. And they're just little specks. And then Earth is a golf ball or whatever. And then you walk so many yards to Mars. And then from Mars to, I think it's Saturn is next. This isn't an astronomy podcast, but it's like a mile. And then to get all the way to Jupiter and Pluto. Did you hear what they did about Pluto? That's messed up.
Yeah,
that's messed up. It's 13 miles. And so it stretches out.
you're like 200 yards. And then you're like 13 miles.
Yes. And so it's a fun way to not even comprehend how big the universe is, or what the relationship is of size to each of these objects.
Wow. That is huge.
That is huge. So
let's do the next one.
Yes.
Next one is the lily pad problem. I don't know if you know this one, but I'm going to ask you a question. A lily pad doubles in size each day. It fills a pond in a month. When is it halfway full?
Oh, interesting. Because you could say, on day 15.
And for a lot of people, that's the gut reaction.
Yeah.
But wait, it doubles in size each day. So it's covering half the pond on day 29, and then fills the pond on day 30.
That makes sense.
And that's a good example of exponential growth. And I'm going to try to squeeze my brain. Exponential growth is something like 0.1, 5, 300, 650 million, 10,345 quadrillion googolplex.
Mm-hmm.
When things increase exponentially, that's just something that our brains are not geared to do naturally. They just don't understand that level of scale. And so when people talk about, oh yeah, this person got COVID, or this person got this illness, and it's going to spread this much each day. Oh, okay, well, that's not too bad. It's like, dude, in a week, that's covering the planet.
Yeah.
You're like, what?
One similar to that is if I give you $1 million today, or for the next 30 days, I'll double your penny. So first day it's a penny, then it's 2 pennies, then it's 4 pennies, then it's 8. And it takes a while, but by the day 30th, you have like $8 quadrillion or something like that. And
yeah,
so you're the richest person on earth.
Exponential growth is just a wild thing.
Yeah.
All right, so the next one.
Yes.
The baseball and bat problem. Okay, so let's say, Spencer, you went to the store and you bought a baseball and a bat.
Okay.
Your receipt says $1.10. The bat's price is $1 more than the ball.
Okay.
How much was the ball?
I think it's 10, but it feels like it's too easy. Based on everything else we're doing, it feels like that's too easy.
Right. We've primed you. So the bat costs $1 more than the ball. So if the ball is 10 cents, how much is the bat?
That's 90 cents more. So it's what the crap? I can't even do that math now. Like I get that it's not 10 cents because
then that would be $1.10 for the bat.
Right. So the ball was free?
Ball was 5 cents.
Ball was 5 cents. 105. Okay, which is 5. Okay. Wow, that hurts my brain.
Aneurysm, right?
Yeah. Because you think it's simple and you're like, no, wait, hold on. I got to do. Now, what's interesting is with so much change in math curriculum, that's not a problem I would ever be given. My kids in middle school are being given questions like that. And they're having to solve them. Yeah. And so in some ways, I appreciate the curriculum. Like the curriculum change is so hard that in some ways I'm learning math from scratch with my kids. But problems like that are introduced a lot earlier because they're more narrative driven problems. That hopefully that means that their theory is that it'll help them understand how to solve a problem differently than.
And we'll actually totally get to how not today, but another day, we'll get into how there are certain biases and hiccups that we have with processing certain problems. If you put it into a story format, or even more importantly, a social format, half those biases disappear. Like people can solve the same problem, same structure, if you make it about people.
Yeah.
Than if you make it about just the numbers.
So let me tell you about one, which is in e-commerce. So I worked for a company that we sold outdoor gear. And what was interesting is we would discount, and we, on the fly, if you ever asked, we'd give you a 10% discount pretty easily and just give you a code and say, yeah, throw this in, get 10% off. And we do that, and no questions asked, almost anyone in the company would be able to give you that discount. What was interesting is they played a lot around with discounts. And so at what point do I need to increase the discount percentage to increase purchase frequency? To get more people to buy.
Get more like what percentage discount do I need to put to get more people to buy the thing?
Right. And it was a huge question that we had all the time of, well, let's put it at 20% off and let's see if we can get more people to buy it. Let's put it at 30% off. Let's put it at 40, 50, 60. And so what percentage other than 10% to get people to seal the deal would be most effective, do you think?
Well, I would think that as high of a percentage as you can. That's my gut reaction to get people to buy something.
Well, sure. But at some point you have a profit margin problem where, yeah, I can get 100 more people to buy it at 60% off, but my profit margin, I might as well only sell it to 5 people at 10% off. Right.
That's the other part of the math too. It's not just getting as many people as you can to buy it. It's your profit margin changes with the percentages off.
Correct. But what's interesting is profit margin excluded just for a second. Just ignore the profit margin for just a second. If I gave you the product at 10% or 40% off, you would buy it at the same rate.
When you say rate, I keep getting confused with like price rate. You mean the same
amount of people would buy it. You'd sell 10 a day at 10% and 40% off because people didn't see a difference. If we put it at 25%, 30%, 35%, anything in between 10 and 40%, it would still sell at 10 units a day. So there was no point in discounting it at 25% if we could sell it for 10%. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I wonder why that is. That seems
honestly,
like that's why this is a good example, because it's like, hey, we did the math and the story in our head doesn't make sense.
Well, ultimately people don't do well with percentages. And until they see 50% off or something like that's half off, 40%, 25%, saying that's a quarter off, like maybe our brains just don't handle those percentages the same way that they do. A 10% is an easy number to get. Well, just it's $100. That's $10 off. I got it. And 40%, I don't understand because I don't know how to easily do 40% off. I want to say that that's unique to that specific store. I don't want to say that that's e-commerce as a whole, but I will tell you, if you go to any place under the sun, you will get harangued with 16 pop-ups and all of them will give you a 10% discount without flinching. It's very uncommon that you'll get a higher discount than that. And so through their own trial and error, I guarantee you 10% off is very effective for closing a deal versus so many other discount amounts that are available.
Well, nothing about percentages, which is actually why a lot of rationalist people say do things with ratios, like use actual numbers, like start with 10,000 or something, is that 98% and 100% do not feel 2% difference. For example, I'm going to use this mosquito repellent on my child. There's a 98% chance this one will work and a 100% chance that this one will work. You're like, well, I definitely want the 100%. Or this one has a 90% chance of no allergic reaction, and this one has a 100% chance of no allergic reaction. You're like, what? 2% chance of an allergic reaction? Heck no. 98% and 100% do not feel 2% different, especially when it comes to positives and negatives. Somebody says 75%, that does not feel emotionally 25% different than 100%. Somebody says, there's a 5% chance that this could go wrong. You're like, holy cow, that's too much.
Mm-hmm.
There's a 1% chance that this could go wrong. Okay, maybe that's okay. There's a 0.5% chance it could go wrong. Oh, so that's basically guaranteed.
Yeah.
It also depends on how you word it, too. If you say 1% chance of going wrong versus saying 99% chance of going right, you will get different reactions.
Yeah.
Our feelings don't, the feelings don't line up.
And depending on your experience with 5%, 5% doesn't feel like a lot when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, because that's just a natural one. And what's the likeliness of hitting a natural one on the dice?
5%
5% of the time. And so
same as the likeliness of hitting a 20.
That's, well, don't talk about that.
Sorry, finish your thought.
But if it's 5%, I'm thinking of, you have to have a surgery and there's a 5% mortality rate. Yeah, I'll take that chance.
Hell no, I'm not taking that chance. 5%? That's 5 out of 100 people.
I know. And that's not too bad. Depending on, again, your context of the world with those numbers, and 5 out of 100.
Maybe you've got a less paranoid.
Even 5 out of 100 may not sound too bad to someone.
Maybe you've got a less extreme, I'll call it loss versus gain ratio than I do. People, when you talk about the chances of losses versus the chances of gains, the gains have to be at least 2 or 3 times as much as the loss for them to feel the same. In other words, a loss feels 2 to 3 times as bad as a gain of the same size.
And a 5% chance, that's, what is that, 95 out of 100? That's
yeah, and you say 5%, that's a 5% chance of something. If we just use this loss versus gain ratio, for some people, 5% might feel at least like 15%. That's the ratio that it feels emotionally like. Yeah. That's why I know that you're bad at math if you do gambling or do the lottery, because the chances of that are so small that you don't have a feeling small enough for it. So you might as well consider it 0. The chance of winning the lottery are so close to 0, just call it 0. Move on with your life.
And I've actually met someone that was big into Bitcoin, and so at work, and he was trying to convince a whole bunch of other people to jump in on this Bitcoin train.
Oh, for this poor hopeful fool.
Yeah, it was called Dogecoin. And I'm just kidding, it wasn't, but might as well have been. But there was multiple people that are like, oh yeah, okay, and they're bought into it. And this one guy's like, listen, guys, play the stock market and Bitcoin, as this, he considered them the same, as much as you would play gambling. You know that what you're spending has a high chance of not returning. And you go to gambling because it's fun for the moment, and that's the entertainment that you get. If you come out winning something, good for you, but it's very unlikely, and you expect coming out with nothing. That said, he had so much money in savings that he invested in the stupid Bitcoin scheme like the others. But it was fascinating that he had, I think, the right perspective of, you need to have 0 feeling for this. you can have the feeling of excitement if you win, but the likeliness of you winning is so low that you need to come in
Don't
knowing that
don't conflate those two.
Yeah,
don't mix them together.
Don't mix those two ideas together. And so that's an interesting idea. The amount of feeling that you should give towards playing the lottery or playing some of the slot machines is you shouldn't have any feeling, which is why people look dead inside when they're playing the slots. There's my joke. Ba-da-cha.
I think we're going to do one more.
Okay, let's hear it.
This is the beast. We're going to, in fact, I'm going to change what the test is. We're going to say this is a flu test.
Okay. And I'm going to challenge you. You got to explain it, but without explaining it. And you just got to explain the numbers. And this is how we're going to end the podcast, because you took about 45 minutes trying to explain this to me and my head's still spinning.
This is very not intuitive. So this is using something called Bayes' theorem, which I'm not going to map out. But it's basically, what is the likelihood that something is true, given that we already know that something else is true? Simple version is if you take a test for the flu, and that test says it's 99% accurate, but it accidentally says that people who don't have the flu have it, like 5%. You do all that math. Hey, I just took a test today. The test came back positive for the flu, so it says I have the flu. 99% chance I have the flu, right? Nope. It's 1/3. At least in this example. You take a 99% accurate test, but it's not just about how accurate it is. It's about how many times it says that people who don't have the flu, that they do. And you put those ratios together, and you're like, wait a minute. And that's why they say, for a lot of things, do one test, and then the next day do another test. Because the likelihood of getting 2 tests in a row that you don't have the flu, and they say, oh, you got it, that likelihood starts getting pretty low.
Interesting.
But it's absolutely wild. And this is one of those cases where using ratios is good. Say, I'm going to start with 10,000 people. We guess that this many of people actually have the disease. This many people it tests correctly in saying they do. This many people it wrongly says that they do when they don't. You do all those numbers, and you're like, so I got a positive test, and it's only 33% chance that I actually have it.
Yeah.
Or less. That's why always get, if you're getting tested for cancer, if you're getting tested for any disease, do more than one test, because you don't know how often it screws up on saying that somebody has the illness when they don't.
So you're talking about if you become positive for the test that you're taking.
Yes. If the test says you have this illness, do another test or find more factors that will tell if you have the illness, because you don't know how often that test screws up.
Interesting.
And how many times it accidentally says, oh, you've got the flu. And it's like, no, I don't. I have allergies.
Mm-hmm.
Fail. So that's probably a really good place to stop. Is there's just a lot of places where the math screws you up. So unless it has to do with very small things, very small numbers, be suspicious of your gut reaction to math and proportions and exponential growth and things like that, because we didn't evolve in environments that involved a lot of math involving thousands or millions of things.
Yeah.
We evolved in environments where we're dealing with dozens, maybe 100 or 2.
You get extra points today for not going extensively into the Bayes' theorem. So good job on that one. And thanks for joining us on the Questionistas podcast.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Peace out.